Welcome back to the FloTrack podcast. Our email is flotrackpodcast@gmail.com. You can reach out to us with any questions, concerns, or comments. Today is the day before Independence Day, Friday, July 3rd. My name is Lincoln Shrike. He's Gordon Mack. Got some news to talk about this morning, the day before July 4th. We've had a little trouble this week, Gordon, keeping in line who's supposed to be podcasting when. I think we got it figured out today. Hopefully Kevin doesn't log back on. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. I have to apologize to you and to the FloTrack community. I slept in yesterday. I know it's a 9 a.m. podcast. I woke up to a 9:20 text saying, Gordon, you doing this? And by then it was too late. You guys had already got the ball running. Kevin stepped up and filled in for me. And then we had another confusion. I was going to do me and Kevin, and then you came in. So it was going to be a three-way podcast, but now back to two-way. In the end, our scheduling for these podcasts has been a little bit off, and I apologize. Maybe I was already in vacation mode on Thursday. I like to do, a 5-day July 4th weekend because I believe it took the Declaration of Independence wasn't actually signed on July 4th.
Oh God, I have no idea. I don't know. I would have thought that, but it's been a few hundred years ago, so my memory doesn't serve me very well.
If you type in Declaration of Independence, we'll figure it out. Declaration of Independence actual date. It was July 2nd. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, why do we celebrate it on the 4th then?
So
is that when the founding fathers got drunk and had hot dogs and blew up fireworks? So they said, let's make it that day. That was more fun than signing.
Yeah, maybe there's a what? I forget. I remember there's something about like it took like 3 days to sign it or something like that. I don't know.
Okay.
But maybe it was first drafted on July 2nd, but then the final signature came on July 4th. There's probably some history buff out there who's like,
or just a regular
out right now because I'm wrong.
This may be common knowledge and we just don't know. I have no idea. It's what those expensive private school educations got for us. All right. On today's show, we have some news that just came across the Twitter sphere this morning. Former marathon world record holder Wilson Kipsang of Kenya. He got a 4-year ban for whereabouts failures and tampering by providing false evidence and witness testimony. This case, a bit of a doozy, obviously on its face. A guy who ran 2:03:23 not all that long ago. I mean, I guess he would have run that in, I think, 2013, but essentially this ends his career. I mean, Kipsang hadn't been relevant for a number of years, and I forget exactly how old he is, and I'm looking that up right now. But I mean, he was never going to be back on the level of Kipchoge. But still, this now puts he's 38 years old, so he won't be able to compete until he's 42. 42. That basically ends his competitive career, one would think. This is kind of a wild case, though. He came up with all of these reasons as to why he would have missed tests, talking about, landslides and bad weather in Kenya and why he couldn't make it to his test. A full 79-page report came out today. I did not, in the 30 minutes since I saw it until we started, have time to read the whole thing. But this definitely puts an asterisk on the career of one of the greatest marathoners of all time. What's your reaction, Gordon?
Yeah, I know it's a long report, but there are some like notable highlights. Basically, he was claiming, that because there was like mudslides, and it also caused there was like a traffic accident. There's someone tweeted, Sean Engel tweeted out. He did some combing through it. He says the Wilson Kipsang case has a defense for the ages. He claims he missed a doping test because of an overturned truck caused by landslides. Only it wasn't true, and the truck photo was taken 3 months later.
That's not good.
So like he was Google image searching a truck maybe, and just be like, oh yeah, this is my car with like Honda Civic. Boom, my car. It's in an accident. That's why I didn't show up. So
when that type of thing backfires, when you're clearly being deceitful, going to those types of lengths, it obviously only puts a bigger suggestion that you are in fact, maybe doping. He hasn't failed a test, but when you're going through this level, it certainly has that suggestion, right? Because that's ridiculous. I mean, I think it's kind of insulting to the AIU and the investigative body to think that he could get away with that and provide that sort of excuse. So they get him with the 4-year. That is not obviously what a whereabouts violation would typically generate. So the tampering, I think, adds the whole kit and caboodle on top of it. And like I said, essentially ends his career. He really hadn't been relevant for some time. I think back to 2018 when he was in that world record race with Eliud Kipchoge in Berlin. He ran 2:06. And as of last year, he was basically, not competitive in London. He ran 2:09 to get 12th in London. It's tough because what is his legacy now? I know this comes at the end of his career after he was on top of his game. So you could think, well, this is separate from that. But Kenya's, kind of spotty history with drug testing and the out of competition stuff. You just have to wonder if you're willing to lie about all this and if you're being so sketchy with your tests, you would think he would be fine getting tested now. Like what is he, he's not the world record holder. He's not probably getting tested near as much as he would have been in the 2012 to 2015 era. Like this really suggests that he was up to no good. We don't have that proof. And like he said, I never tested positive for anything. But all these excuses add up to somebody who is looking to hide something.
Yeah, I mean, he has like a wild career. I mean, obviously he has his 2:03. I remember his wild finish in the New York City Marathon was kind of, you normally don't see a sprint to the finish, but we had one in New York. I forget what year that was when he won New York. He ran for government in Kenya on wasn't he? I mean, I could be wrong, but didn't he campaign to be make doping illegal, where you could go to jail or something like that? Wasn't he trying to make it like a law that you can't dope?
Oh God, I have
I could have
no
sworn
idea.
I could have
I have
sworn he
no
ran on
idea.
a campaign that in order to stifle doping in Kenya, we need to make it a law, because then it's not just an athletic sanction, but like a government sanction.
That beats me. I may have let them slip the cracks here, but notably, it's just two prominent Kenyans over the male Kenyans over the last couple of years, Kiprop and now Kipsang, to receive 4-year bans. That's obviously significant and really tarnishes, I think, each athlete's legacy.
Yeah, it's wild. I mean, and having the fake photos and your excuses. I mean, it's just, but it also shows that he was able to. Again, he hasn't tested positive, but this is a situation where you can kind of believe more the whereabouts failure rule is resulting in what we want, to try to catch drug dodgers, cheat dodgers, whatever, drug dodgers, because we've been talking about whereabouts failures now for, I feel like, every other week, the different athlete, especially with all these American athletes that have, and notably Christian Coleman. This case seems a little more extreme and a little more intention of missing. And I think that's the whole purpose of having this rule, right? With the three strikes and you're out rule. So I think Kipsang is kind of the poster boy for this is how we are trying to handle drug dodgers. Whereas the Coleman situation is a little more nuanced, in my opinion, with more banning ignorance as opposed to banning cheating or something like that. So
yeah, they have to be treated the same. Obviously, Kipsang got more because of the tampering involved, but the whereabouts things, they're treated with the same token, regardless of the circumstances. I'm just wondering, what does this make you think of this guy's career? He ran faster. So he set the world record, I believe, in 2013 with his 2:03.23. And then he did end up in 2016 running faster, running 2:03.13 to finish behind Bekele in Berlin, an Olympic bronze medalist from 2012. Does this make you look at his career any differently?
Yeah, I mean, he has what, 5 majors, 1 Olympic medal, and he was top 3 4 other times. He was consistently at least once per year from 2012 to 2017. He was winning or getting top 3 in a major marathon.
Mm-hmm.
He was very consistent. He's kind of like Kipchoge, but Kipchoge was just perfect. Kipchoge was just perfect in every race. He was consistent in every race mostly. That he at least 1 per year. But it does we could say tamper his legacy.
I can see that.
Yeah, I don't know, man. It's just hard to for some reason it doesn't feel disappointing. It more just feels like, well, there's another one, because we have that situation with, especially
for
in the
me,
road
it
racing.
really does. Yeah, it does affect his legacy for me because we know that the whereabouts violations have really picked up in recent years. So there's no telling if he has been in the past up to similar actions and at best been careless with where he's at related to his testing windows, and at worst, dodging these to avoid testing positive. He's one of the best marathoners of the last era. He ran 2:03, I think, on 4 occasions. For this to come at the end of his career, when you would think, I guess the argument would be if he was taking substances. Again, he hasn't tested positive, so we'll give him the benefit of the doubt. But if he was, I guess he was trying for one last run to become to stay relevant. But you could also assume, he was good for a long time. Maybe he's been up to things like this for a while. We don't know that, but for me, it definitely puts a scar on it. And he's never going to be Eliud Kipchoge's. Kipchoge's long since surpassed him. But this puts a black mark on his record that puts into question all of his performances from years prior. I think for sure. It's tough to celebrate him as much as we would have otherwise, knowing that in 2019 he was trying to deliberately mess with the anti-doping testing policies and whereabouts rules. So this is unfortunate for the sport.
I do suggest you guys watch, if you're listening or watching, check out our Driven series on him. we did a whole 2 or 3 part series on Wilson Kipsang when he was in Kenya, and it's kind of weird to kind of watch it now, knowing that he was, doing what he was doing. It's kind of weird, it's weird watching an athlete project a certain persona, and then years later you learn that persona might not be as true as you first thought. But
yeah, we'll see. I mean,
series has a new light now.
Yeah, he claims his innocence, but guess what? It seems like everyone claims their innocence, obviously, and that doesn't mean one person is, you can't be innocent and wrongly convicted. But when everyone says I'm not at fault, I shouldn't have this ban, it tends to kind of numb you to that, and it's hard to take seriously what anyone says. But this is really unfortunate for the sport, and now you can't look at his career the same, and that's tough for somebody who was so good for so long. All right, moving on, we have other bits of news. Jake Riley, the Olympic marathoner to be, signs with On Running, which is a brand that is slowly becoming more prominent in the distance running world. We know that I think they have the Zap team. They're sponsoring them, that team out of North Carolina. And now they have Jake Riley seems to me one of their biggest signings in the running community ever, just in the sense that he will represent the U.S. in Tokyo in 2021. He'll race tomorrow against Jared Ward wearing his kit in that remote 5K on Instagram. But to me, the big news out of this is just a signaling that On is going to maybe have a bigger presence in the U.S. as far as signing athletes. What was your takeaway?
Yeah. I mean, when did you first even learn about this brand? Like,
Well,
I'll be
yeah,
honest, I was not very aware of this brand very recently. So,
yeah, I worked at a running store, and we had On shoes there, and people liked them because they were light, and they look different, right? They have like these little like kind of pods, and there's gaps between the bottom layer of of rubber or whatever, the sole of the shoe, and then up to the cushioning. There's like little gaps. It's not the traditional look, and the shoes aren't cheap by any means. I mean, what running shoe is? But yeah, we're just not used to them having a presence. I mean, I don't know what On spikes looks like. I don't know if they have them. I mean, he's not going to be running track races frequently, so I don't think that's going to be a big concern for a marathoner. But this is a brand that we're just not used to seeing. It's like when someone signs, it's like, oh, it's a marathoner. Okay, so is it going to be Brooks, Nike, Adidas, or Hoka? I mean, that's kind of where we're, I guess, Saucony too. But this is a new group. This is a new team, not team, sorry, or group. This is a new brand that we may now have to add in there when we speculate about where an athlete's going to go.
I think this is also an interesting kind of, I don't know say the word social experiment, but maybe like mental experiment for someone like Jake. He makes his first Olympic team wearing Vaporflies, right?
Mm-hmm.
And now he's going to be running in these Alpha Flies, yeah, and running in this new brand On running. Just like imagine these two timelines, right? Timeline number one, where Kawhi Leonard's shot doesn't go in, and we're in this timeline, and he signs with On Run. He doesn't sign with On Running, and he stays with Vape. Or no, he does. Sorry, timeline number one, signs with On Running, and he improves. Timeline number two, he signs with On Running, and he flatlines or kind of doesn't improve.
Mm-hmm.
Will that bring up a shoe debate saying like, hey, this is showing that like the same athlete with two different shoes, his trajectory went up or down a certain way, and that will kind of be debated. Like, do you think people, the first time Jake goes out there and runs a full marathon, and it's a better performance or worse performance than his most recent one, will people blame or credit the shoe?
Well, first thing, what was the reason for bringing up Kawhi Leonard? Was that just a nightmare flashback for you?
Yeah. So every time I think of timelines, I always want to create the timeline where the shot doesn't go in. For those listening, the shot is the Sixers game, the Kawhi Leonard game-winning shot in Game 7, which means that the Sixers would have eventually won the NBA title that year, but everyone just pretends Toronto was the best team. Anyway, Okay. I like to think my whole thing is I like to think that if the shot doesn't go in, we don't have a pandemic. So
that is a tough take there. Science does
different timeline.
Back that up. Science does
Sixers
not
having a Sixers having an NBA parade. Someone gets really excited. One thing leads to another, and we're all celebrating 4th of July on the beach, barbecuing in groups of 100 plus. I'm just saying, we can all blame Kawhi Leonard.
Okay. I'll dispute every single thing you just said, but I don't think I need to go through it. Okay, on to Jake Riley. Yeah, it's going to be very interesting because before the pandemic, we were, as far as marathoning goes, we were just talking about Alpha Flies and shoes and what advantage do these shoes provide. And of course, he's run really, really well in these shoes. He first in the Vaporfly, he ran his big breakthrough in Chicago last October, running 2:10. And then he runs a PR on the very hard course in Atlanta, wearing their new shoe, the Nike Alpha Fly. So he was, said he was willing to run in any shoe if he got a sponsorship. Didn't necessarily have to be the Nike Alpha Fly, even though he's had success in that shoe. But I always thought he's probably going to go with Nike if they give him an offer, just because he has had so much success in that shoe, which we, of course, has the carbon plate and is just has had athletes. I mean, Eliud Kipchoge ran 1:59.40 in the shoe. Like, it's obviously a good shoe, and to want to change it, you know, regardless of how skeptical you are of the technology and if it's that much better than everything else, you're getting a push in that shoe, and you may not find it in another brand. Now, for Riley, he's going to say, well, having a brand behind me and getting paid is well worth trading out the shoes. But it is going to be interesting to see. Obviously, no course is the same, so we won't know unless Chicago doesn't get canceled and he runs Chicago. Then we can compare his time from then to that. But you never know for certain if it's the shoes or not. But it is going to be interesting to see what he does, because, on their marketing right now or whatever doesn't say that they have some super shoe, or, the general narrative around their brand doesn't have that buzz like Nike does, or even an Adidas of having one of these super shoes that's next gen and is, 4% better than whatever. So I will be fascinated to see if there are noticeable differences in his competitiveness off of this. I don't want to discredit him as an athlete. He was great at Stanford. He's had some good performances throughout the years, and then he broke out in 2019 and early 2020, just when it correlated with the release of these shoes and the kind of the era of the Nike Alphafly, Vaporfly, where so many people are running faster. But this is going to be an excellent test case, I think, for how valuable the shoe can be for an athlete. Because now he's got big races ahead, of which he's not going to be in that shoe. And we'll really get to see if his gains were promoted essentially by wearing the super shoe.
Yeah. When it comes to marathon running, we can't have a conversation without talking about the shoe. That's just how it's going to be.
It feels good. Yeah.
It's how it's going to be. A man signs with a on-running shoe company, and the conversation, which because of me gets diverted to, let's talk about the Alpha Flies. But it's true, right? And I think he's going to be a little bit of an experiment. If he has a bad race, someone might ask him, hey, do you miss running in the Alpha Flies?
And there's so many variables in a marathon. Yeah, there's so many variables in a marathon that can cause you to have a bad race. But given that his two races in the Nike shoes have been spectacular, or his two marathons, I should say. I think he ran a half at some point in the middle of his Chicago and trials performance, but his two marathons have been absolutely A+, the best of his career, one after the other in those Nike series of shoes, two different pairs, but still yet the shoes that are controversial and caused World Athletics to come out with rules about stack height and the number of carbon plates you can have. So now he's taking that shoe off his foot, and it's kind of like Tiger Woods is switching drivers. And so that's a weird comparison. Jake Riley, not Tiger Woods, but it's just going to be interesting. It's going to be a storyline when he races.
Yep. Agreed.
Yep. Got it. Nothing else to add there? Yeah.
Nothing else to add, go for it. I know it's my job when you're in a podcast mode, it's like improv. It's yes and.
Yeah.
You gotta be always like keep the conversation going. I mean, I'm always impressed when you do a hour podcast, you realize how hard it is to do 3-hour podcasts. And I have a newfound respect for people who do just long conversation podcasts. It's a talent. Anyway.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with you. All right, moving on to our next story. This is a very interesting one. Gwen Berry, the U.S. hammer thrower who has won 4 national titles, and most recently in 2019 won the Pan Am title in Peru and generated a lot of headlines for her peaceful protest of raising a fist. She is claiming right now, days after the USATF Foundation grants were released, of which there was $850,000 worth of grants released to 100 U.S. athletes, she did not receive one. So she is claiming and saying that she is being punished dating back to 2019 for her protest, and claiming that the reason she didn't receive any of this grant money was because of that. It's a heavy subject. We don't have proof either way, but it's interesting. Berry lays out on Twitter her, comparisons to her peers, such as Deanna Price, who received the grant money. Deanna Price was the world champion last year. She got the 20,000. Obviously, Gwen Berry did not win the world title, but she made it to Doha. Didn't make the final, but there's people in the women's hammer throw below her on the U.S. list, and then the world rankings, such as Brooke Anderson and let's see, Connor McCullough, who's obviously on the men's side. Those athletes received $5,000 grants. They were among the 75 who received $5,000 grants, and Gwen Berry didn't even receive that. It is a curious thing for her, with so many athletes receiving these grants. Basically, it's the who's who. Is almost everyone you can think of. It receives some money in some form for being at this level, and Berry doesn't receive one this year. It's easy to see her point. It's like, why is she being punished for not doing this? Because although she didn't make the final in Doha, of which she was expected to do, winning Pan Ams and making it to the World Championships and being consistent, as she points out, she's been consistent for the last several years. And, Berry in 2017 received a $27,000 grant. Last year, in 2018, she received $5,000. And in 2019, she also received one as well, but to not get one for 2020 is a little curious. What are your thoughts here, Gordon?
So first of all, she did make the Doha final. She just was no mark, so she had 3,000 in the final. So that's why
you're right.
She doesn't show up in the result. Yeah,
my bad.
So she just 3,000 in the final. Just minor correction there. So here's my thoughts. How do they decide who gets this money? Because if you look at the list of athletes who got money, you know who didn't get money? Rai Benjamin. Rai Benjamin got $0.
You sure?
Sandy Morris. Yeah. Sandy Morris. $0.
Wow.
Jen Sure, $0. And so my question is, and then here's someone who did get money, Mary Kane. Mary Kane got money. Mary Kane is probably the 30th fastest woman in the 5K in the 1500. I don't know, right?
Yeah,
I don't know. So
curious. Well, I think they could benefit from some transparency to say how they came up with these, because there are the superstar athletes in there, right? The names are.
But the thing is, we see the superstar athletes, but we also, when you actually, track is really big, right? And there's a lot of, like, Danny Jones got money. Like,
who just turned professional.
Carissa Schweizer did not, right? So I do have a question. Maybe is everyone eligible for this? Do you have to be a part of a program to be eligible for it? So like Rai Benjamin is kind of like, I'm good. Like Noah Lyles is like, I'm good. I don't need to do this or whatever. I don't know what the rules are, right? But so the argument that like Gwen says, I was ranked 4th in the world. Well, there's people. I mean, Noah Lyles was the best in the world in one of the most popular events, and he got $0, right? So the first question is, clearly they're not just giving the money out to all the best U.S. athletes, and clearly they're also giving money to people who aren't even near the best, right? So there's got to be different reasons for what they're doing. When it comes specific to the hammer throw, I looked it up. There are 2 women hammer throwers got money, which was Brooke Anderson and Deanna Price.
Yeah.
Now, while Gwen Berry did better than Brooke Anderson at Worlds and beat her at USA's, Deanna's Price is 2019 personal best, season's best was 78.24 meters. Brooke Anderson's personal best was 76.75 meters. And Gwen Berry's personal best was 76.46 meters. So they gave it to the 2 farthest throws. Again, just I don't know.
We don't know that. Yeah.
So, but what I'm saying is, how do they decide? And then ultimately, this is where it really comes down to. This is a guy who is literally giving charity to whoever to 100 people, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we like so is the argument that like he gave it to the wrong 100 people. He gave it to 99 correct people, except for one person shouldn't have gotten it, and it should have gone to a different person.
Yeah, I
When
just
we're
think
talking
she's
about,
saying I've received this before, and she's seen parallels between what she heard from the USATF Foundation, of which in a Yahoo Sports article, she says after her protest, that a foundation official, quote, and told me I better not do it again or else I'll lose funding. So you can look at the fact that X, Y, and Z athlete didn't receive it, the grant as well. But if that phone call is true, then there is, which I mean, going on, believing Gwen Berry's word, don't have any reason to not believe her word, because we know athletes who have protested before have been punished. And we know that after her Pan Am thing, she had a hearing, I believe, with the USOPC, who were deciding if they were going to strip her gold medal because of her protest, because it went against the rules. So for that reason, there's definitely proof that punitive things have happened based on these things. I have reason to think that she was left off because of that. Now, USATF is going to deny it, and that's fine. And they can point to the things that you just said, that, well, no, Lyles didn't receive it, and as far as the hammer throw goes, these two athletes threw further. But for Berry, her evidence is I've received it 2017, 18, and 19. Last year, I had a good year, won an international medal, not the world championships, but an international Pan Am gold. I protest. You call me and say, you better not do it again or you'll lose funding. That's all the evidence she needs, obviously. And I see her point there. I see your point, and it makes sense because, I mean, Christian Coleman's not in here. I mean, that's maybe for a different reason, but whatever. And Noah Lyles isn't on there. So I don't know how they choose. Is it up to this Steven Schwartzman, the guy who gives the grant, the billionaire who's rolling out the cash? Maybe he gets to choose. I don't know. We have no idea. There's no rationale given for why some athletes are on here and some aren't.
I think I know what the rationale is, which might go to further Gwen's case. I don't think it's like a rule. I think this is a guy who loves track, who is literally doing charity. He is literally just spending his own money to keep track and field afloat. Like, no other sport relies on a billionaire donor to like fund their professional athletes. Like,
yeah,
which is like the crazy part. Like we kind of want to connect it to USATF and be like, oh yeah, this is like the grant, and like, but like in the end, this is just like a dude giving out handouts to all these elite athletes because our sport doesn't have a big enough economy to support itself. We need charity. We need charity to support, right? Plenty. But when you look at the list, and you see a list like with Mary Kane on it, who has not like been. When's the last time she ran at USA's? It's been a long time. And I think the reason why Mary Kane's name was on it is because Mary Kane is on a comeback trail. She was in the news. She has a great story. She was dealing with a shitty situation that she finally was able to talk about publicly.
Yeah.
And the track community rallied around her. And I think this guy was like, hey, Mary, I know you're not good right now, but I'm going to give you a slot of my 100 people, right? So I have 99 slots left. And I think what this guy does is he looks at Track and World and he says, I could pick 100 athletes. So I'm going to pick these for different reasons. I like you. And he may be picking someone because he doesn't like someone, right? And that could be why he chose to not pick Gwen, right? And the reason why he could say he doesn't like Gwen could be connected to her protest, right? The question is like,
could be, but that's that's wrong if they're letting somebody have that much power. I know it's his money, but I don't know. One side of the argument that this was just not just based on performance merits, because I mean, Michael Norman's not on here, Sidney McLaughlin's not on here, Grant Holloway's not on here. There's athletes that are huge, high profile that don't necessarily need the money, but very, very successful. But you could argue that some athletes that receive the 20 grand also don't, world champions who have been successful for a while don't also need the money. I mean, anybody can use $20,000, even if you're, very comfortable, but still yet it's not just, I think there was some, be it preference, be it just random selection, because there's other names that have been very, very successful for USA Track and Field that were obviously deserving of a $20,000 grant. And maybe they didn't apply for the grant. I don't know. Maybe there was an essay involved and some athletes were like, whatever. I'm not writing that up. I don't know.
Like Grant Holloway it's like, yeah, man, you want this money? Yeah. Oh yeah, sweet. Yeah, sign me up. And he's like, you got to fill this out. He's like, man, I got to go play video games.
Yeah.
I can see Grant totally be like, nah, I ain't got time for that.
I that's how I would be as well. But we can argue back and forth. This pointless when we don't know the full process. I think the biggest thing on Berry's side is that phone call that she got after the Pan Am's medal ceremony where she raised a fist. And they said, don't do it again. You'll lose funding. Now, we don't have proof that happened. We're taking her at her word, but that's a pretty clear sign that in her eyes, and it makes sense that this was a deliberate thing leaving her off. We know hammer throwers. I don't know Gwen Berry's financial situation. I don't need to, but hammer throwers aren't going to be as well off as track stars. That's just facts. Like their contracts are not as big. It doesn't matter how many world records or medals you set. You're never going to be as big of a deal as the fourth best sprinter in the US or, even anybody in the top 5. It's just the way it works. The event's not as popular globally. So the field athletes in particular, I think, this money really helps. And so her being left off for the first time in 4 years, she's seen this as not a coincidence. And if that's the case, that's terrible. It's a terrible thing to set by this foundation if they deliberately left her off because she protests police brutality. She's protesting mistreatment against African Americans, and that if she would be left off because of that, that's horrible. And I don't even want to think about it. It's disgusting if it's true.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, this isn't really. Is it? I know the word USATF is in the name, but is this? How involved is USATF in this, or is this just a guy who? You know what I mean? Like, that's what I want to know. Like, I didn't know more guessing about the foundation.
Yeah,
like how
I don't know.
You know what I mean? Because
and how do they determine who gets 20,000 versus who gets 5,000? I have no idea. It's very curious to me. You would think that he can't just like, I want that athlete, that athlete, that athlete, that. I mean, there's got to be some conversations about it, and you got to look at who's received grants in the past. It's curious to me. 2 female hammer throwers in the U.S. got
also,
this.
Are they
and one of them was not Gwen Berry. So
was this also because we're in a pandemic year, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is this back-to-back years of going off of 2019 performances? Like the last time they handed out, were they going off of 2018 or were they going off like when did? Because
I have no idea.
Part of me thinks maybe I would like to look into that because that's also an interesting element because you could argue nothing has changed since the last handout of checks, right? Because like there was no track. So basically you're kind of going off of like, I don't know, what's your criteria? It's like when they're giving out, National Gatorade Athlete of the Year awards with no track season. You're like, okay, who gets it? All right, we'll give it to Nico Young. Why? Because he ran a track time trial. All right, cool.
Yeah.
But so I would like to know the requirement. And like you said, yes, I know this might be controversial, but
Oh, geez.
I guess what I'm trying to say is, how are you supposed to react when a person that you disagree with, that even the national world, the national movement disagrees with this individual, but is this individual being the guy in charge of it's his money, right? His $850,000. Is he entitled to have bad opinions? I guess
Yeah.
with his money, right? I guess so. That's why I want to know how involved USATF is, because USATF is less allowed to have bad opinions because they're kind of the governing body and they should be supportive of all athletes, right? Whereas an
Hmm.
individual, like, you know, that's the only thing I think about it. But I know
I don't
that's
know.
more of like a semantics, I guess, of it. But
If
that's yeah. I just really
if
want to
I,
know how they decide the list, because I looked at the
yeah,
list and I was like, this list doesn't make
and
sense. And
no, there's
then
no.
you know,
Yeah, it doesn't. There's no clear trend because you've got first year pros on there. You've got superstars left out, but then you have some superstars included. Uh, it's curious to me. Is it at the billionaire's discretion? Don't really know. He's a very rich man.
and
You wouldn't
you
think
know,
he wouldn't care for. I don't think he would care for people to decide where his 850 or whatever it was, $875,000 money goes. That's a drop in the bucket for him. But maybe he wants to choose, and these are his list of favorite athletes. I have no idea. I truthfully don't know. Maybe there's somewhere online where it talks about the criteria. I imagine there's an application process, and that could be why you don't see some athletes on here, or they legitimately say, I make a good salary. I don't need to apply for this. I'll leave it for other athletes, which would be a noble thing to do, certainly. But
yeah.
I couldn't tell you. We're just guessing.
So there was a reaction. Right? Didn't she say they called her and were offered her
A
money and then she
5,000.
rejected it?
Yeah, it was I believe for a different grant or something.
Okay.
A lot of tweets to work through here. Hold on one sec. She did. I believe it's in this article, which I hope I can pull it up at this point. Which probably not. My internet's struggling. I think that's true. And then she denied it. I think out of principle, which I understand. She got support from Allison Felix, who said she stands with her, which is a good athlete to have on your side, of course. It's interesting. I don't know if anything will come of this. Typically in track, with these type of things go away, but I do feel bad for her if how this whole situation has played out since she protested in Peru at the Pan Am Games last summer.
I mean, an interesting person. I mean, it would be interesting to see what a person who did receive money would say, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
they're kind of, are they going? Are they going to? That I guess that's a real question. Because Allison Felix, she wasn't part of the grant. So Allison
Yeah.
Felix can easily, she has no skin in the game. I don't know if that's even the correct term, but I would just be like, yeah, it's like maybe the athletes are kind of like, I don't want to say anything because then they'll take my money. Like,
Yeah,
they're
the
caught
athlete
they're
that got
caught
the
in a
grant.
bad
You don't want to.
situation. Yeah.
Yeah, you're not going to come out probably and say anything negative. But yeah, Felix, that's a
Wait
great
till Jack.
supporter to
Yeah.
have, and lends it more credence too, because she's been in the sport, and I assume she's received many grants and knows how the process works. So I trust what she says, and her supporting Gwen Berry is significant. And she, and you would take that as she also believes there's reason to think that she's being punished for her protests. So I don't know what will come of this. I imagine we'll learn more details as this story goes along. Gwen Berry's been very outspoken on social media, so I think we'll get provided more details on her end, at least in the coming days.
Yeah, for sure. It's an interesting
Cool.
story.
All right. Well, that'll do it for us today. We forgot to even mention today was our 100th episode. We didn't have a confetti rain down through the streaming platform or anything like that, but we made it to 100. Hopefully hundreds
really?
more to go. Today's number 100. I believe so.
I don't know, man.
Could be. Oh no! Wait, no. I think I listed yesterday's episode as 99. It was 98. So today's 99. Oops. All right. So I got some editing to. I got to go back and edit some things here. So my mistake. Next week will be number 100.
I do think technically this is our 100th episode because one of our episodes was an emergency podcast that didn't get a number. So it is the 100th episode, but it's not the 100th proper episode. That will be Monday.
I understand.
And we'll have a celebration then.
I just think
it's
I
like
forgot how to count.
It's like the July 2nd, July 4th Independence Day discrepancy. We have the same thing with our podcast.
Just semantics. All right. Well, we will see you guys next week. Have a good 4th of July.